my message is, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, wow, good feedback. Wow, that's awesome. Numbers 24-12, okay? Why did you bring the Lord's community into the wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grains or fig, grapevines, or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to him. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gathered the assembly together. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arm, struck the rock twice with his staff instead of speaking at it. He struck it with the staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of Israel, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. My heart today is that you would enter into everything that God has for you, that you would enter your promised land. And like Moses here, I just want to give you a little bit of backdrop. They had just fled, guys, okay? Saw God do, they were in slavery in the hands of Egypt, in case you don't know the story. And God called Moses to lead his people out of Egypt into the promised land. But they had to go through, a few obstacles that God's hand was on, and he did miraculous miracles, and they were delivered, okay? Long story short, I'm not going into that, but long story short, God, did it. He brought them out of slavery. Now they've crossed the Red Sea, which was a crazy miracle. The water parted. They went through. Now they're in the desert, okay? And the enemy behind them got washed in the water, and they're dead, okay? So they're free, okay? They're not in their promised land yet, okay? They're in the desert, okay? They're in the desert, and that is a process. The desert is their process. And how we know, sometimes the desert can feel, or processes in life can feel a little bit like a desert, right? Yeah. Anyways, let me just pray before I go on. Thank you, Jesus, for open hearts this morning. Thank you for your presence. We thank you for your glory, your presence to just come and be in this place, God, that you would lead every word that you want me to speak. I pray, God, that you would just shine your light in any areas of people's life that you want them to just pay attention to in this season, in Jesus' name. And we just pray for wisdom and revelation in Jesus' name. Amen. So to get yourself ready to enter into everything that God has for in your life, there's a process. We're all into many different processes, okay? There's more than one process in your life, okay? But there's some process that are more like, wow, that was life-changing, okay? So Hebrews 11:1, faith is a confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance that, about the things that we cannot see. So guys, it's good to have that clear picture in faith of your end goal, right? Yeah. So whether it's your body healed, or a specific job, or it's your ministry, whatever it is, finances, whatever it is, okay? It's good by faith to picture it, okay? Yeah. But the process between is totally out of our control. Yeah. And if we try and control it, we're stalling the process. Yeah, okay? That we can't expect it. And a lot of time it goes against what we actually expect it to go. Okay?
That's a good word.
And so Israel, they had a process. They had a process, and their process was God wanted them to trust in God for their daily needs, for their food, for their water. That was the process for them, okay? God wanted to build their character. God wanted to build their faith, okay, so that they could properly steward, really, their promised land. And so for many reasons, we are in processes to grow our character, to grow our faith, to learn, to get revelation. Some of us need just healing, inner healing, whatever it is, okay? But a lot of times, sometimes, God will prepare. We're entering into a process to prepare us to receive that promise, okay? And so I want to share you 4 things that we go through, okay, that we, to a certain level, all of us go through it. Moses went through it. I go through it. Sean goes through it. It doesn't mean that it's every time you enter a promise you go through those things, but I'm sure you will be able to relate with my testimony. And my first point is the process of why, okay? Yeah. Numbers 24-5. Why did you bring the Lord's community into the wilderness? This is further on, okay? They saw many miracles happen, okay? This is more than once now God provided for water and food, okay? They've seen many miracles, but still, why did you bring the Lord's community into the wilderness that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grains or figs, grapevines, pomegranate, and there's no water to drink. That's crazy. They've seen so much miracle, and still they're like, why? Why? And so I'm going to tie up my story into this. When I was 11 or 12, I'm not too sure exactly, but I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, okay? Do you guys know what Crohn's disease is? Autoimmune disease that infects your intestines, okay? So I grew up for at least 12 years that I can remember with just severe sickness, okay? Like that, I lived that every day. Every day, I was in pain. But I got immune to it, okay? I was just like having cramps and everything else that comes with it was normal. And I had numerous hospital visits. In junior high, the worst time that this could happen, and at two occasions, I was like 3 months where they would take me off food to give my intestines a break. And then I would have to go to school with a tube up my nose because that's how I was being fed. And I was super skinny because food just went through me. And if I wasn't skinny, it's because I was on steroids and I looked like Superwoman, with like squirrel cheeks, like chubby cheeks, like majorly. And so I went through all of those things, and it was definitely hard. And I was not so consumed of like, oh, why is this happening to me? Because I was a kid, I was still young, and I was just so busy to try and stay normal and do whatever my friends were doing. But I definitely remember having those moments of like laying in bed and just being like, why is this happening? And especially for the people that were close to me, they were like, why is this happening to Michelle? Why is this happening to Michelle? But to go back with like just my story and what Moses was going through, like the whys, like we have so much whys in our process. But like here, the Israelites were saying like, why God? But God, what he wanted was a what?
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good
what
word.
are you going to do, God? Because we know you're a good God. What are you going to do? What's your plan?
Yeah.
Right? And so this is amazing. This is amazing that we have a God that we could actually go to and say, what? What are you doing? And so, which goes into my second point here, the process of fear. And so, by the grace of God, I became a Christian. Woohoo! Okay. So this is like a couple years after, like as a 12. I think I was like 22. Okay, so I think I was 22. No, I got my healing at 22. I'm not too sure of the dates. Okay, I'm terrible with that. But anyways, okay, in college, God met me. I became a Christian, became born again, super happy, super excited. So I'm in my Bible and I see, by his stripes, I am healed. So I'm like, wow, like this is a promise for me, right? So here, just 2 seconds. I'm going a little too fast. Numbers 26. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. So it's safe to admit that Moses was human and he went through fear too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, from the moment he was called, he had major fear. He did not look or played the part of, and he was even saying to God, like, don't pick me to lead the people out of Egypt. Like, I'm not the person. He had a speech, he had a hard time speaking clearly. He had just murdered somebody. He had just murdered. You imagine the guilt, and he was a good man. Like he must have had so much guilt and so much like unworthiness over himself, carrying that. And so he experienced fear as well, especially having a whole, like, thousands of people, like, looking up to you for the response. If something goes wrong, why did you lead us here? Imagine, like, he went through it. He went through it. And so I know that I went through it as well. And so here we are, okay? So I'm like, okay, of course I struggled with fear. Of course I did with my walk. Like, they told me I couldn't have kids. I mean, they told me all kinds of stuff. And it was just like, definitely had fear of, like, my potential future, right? And I came to the place where, I saw that Bible verse. And I was like, by your stripes I'm healed. So I went to the face of God. I said, God, I have it. This is what your word says. So I was just declaring, and I remember I went through a season, okay? I think it was like a week. You know, sometimes I say seasons. Seems longer. But it was just like a week. And I was just like, God, like, constantly, like, aggressively pursuing God, being like, by your stripes I'm healed. I was working at work, and I would go I was literally under my breath saying, by your stripes I'm healed. By your stripes I'm healed. By your stripes I'm healed. I'm healed. And then I had my church community, my church family also interceding for me. I cannot stress enough the importance of church community. Okay? I think I'm going to do a message on that one day, okay? Don't quote me on that, okay? But yeah, it's just so important. I had the people praying for me. And all of a sudden, I started being like, okay, I'm going to start eating anything I can eat, okay? I'm not saying go ahead and do that, okay? That was my process. And remember, every process look different, okay? But just kind of, you can relate the emotions through it, okay? But for me, I started eating, okay, I'm going to start eating everything I can eat. So I just started eating everything I couldn't eat before. Everything I couldn't eat. Got so sick, okay? And this is when I was, like, contending, okay? I got worse. I was so sick. I remember I was going to youth, and we had to stop at Burger King, and I had to use the washroom because I was so sick. And a couple days after, I went from being so sick to, like, boom, nothing. No cramps, no all the stuff that comes with it. Like, it was, like, complete healing. And I remember, like, a lot of these people, it's so cool because a lot of people that are in the youth group praying for me, I see them all in this room. It's awesome now. But, so and so I got a major healing, and I remember sharing with the church and sharing about my healing. And it's like, almost like the enemy was tempting me, and I started feeling pain again. And I was like, no, you're a lie, come out. And then the pain would go. And it happened like 3 times, and from that moment, from back then, still leading up to, like, my recent surgery that I've had, like, I've never experienced the typical Crohn's disease symptoms, okay, which is awesome. It's a complete healing, complete miracle. But, okay, so I experienced this healing. It was good for a while, but then God showed me, like, a picture, and he showed me that he had calmed the tornado, the inflammation and, like, you know, the active Crohn's disease. He had calmed that, but it had left a mess, like a tornado. When it comes, it leaves a mess, right? It had left a mess, and it left some scar tissues, and the way to go about it, to fix that, was surgery, okay? I was not ready for that. That was not the process for my complete healing that I was expecting at all, okay? That was just no way. Like, I had so much fear attached to it. I was like, even like this woman of God that I super respect, woman of faith, was like, maybe you should get your part of that intestines removed. And I was like, no. Like, I was like, okay. And I was like, she's definitely hurting wrong. Like, she's a woman of faith. How can she be expecting that? Like, why is she not saying, like, continue to, like contend? Like, what's wrong with people, you know? And so because I left that kind of scar tissue there, it started closing up. And it's like, imagine, like, if a tornado were to happen, and all of a sudden we're like, well, God's going to clean the mess. No, God uses his people, right? Yeah. God uses his people, and that's what it was for me. God wanted to complete my healing through just using his people that he's called to do amazing things, right? Yeah. And so throughout the years, starting to get more and more sick again, start creeping up, and having gallbladder issues, and again, having the opportunity of getting that removed. I was like, no. Part of me felt like if I did, maybe I'd never had that healing. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like I need to continue supernaturally. my healing, or I need to use the food God's put on this earth and the herbs that God put on this earth to try and heal me first. Like, for me, it's like I needed to go through, like, let me try it on my own first, okay? Sean said it this morning again, I'm very stubborn, okay? And I had to do it on my own, okay? I had to try it, and God knew I needed to go through that. Because if I would have had surgery right away, oh, God knows what would happen. Like, I had to try on my own to come to the place of, like, being like, okay. And so I've tried many things. So at this point, I've had, like, 3 kids, okay? And after Ezekiel, bless him, not his fault, but I got even more sick, okay? Nothing to do with him at all. It went well. It's just that my body, it's hard on your body now. So whatever I already had, it keeps getting worse, okay? So the obstruction, it's still there, okay? And I'm trying to control it with food and all that stuff. And I just came to the point where I was just trying so much out of my own. I came to a point where I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I can't do it anymore. There was just so much, like control, and I don't know how to explain. Like, I was experiencing guilt, because it was like, okay, if I ate this, then I would get sick, you know. And I had people's eyes around me watching, making sure I was eating the right thing, sleeping the right thing, and myself too, watching myself. Am I doing this right? And it was so strict that I couldn't do it on my own strength. And that wasn't even the answer, you know. If that's your process, and God's like, your process is through, you know, food, you know, sometimes that's your process. But you have to understand, my process wasn't that. God uses medicine. He'll use like herbs. He'll use food. He's trying to eat. Sometimes just eating a healthy, clean diet will solve a lot of our problems. But for me, I had an obstruction. Didn't matter how much of that I did. That needed to be removed. Okay? And so I came to the point where it was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like if I'm not doing everything right, it's like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And I said to Sean, like, I feel like it's all up to me if I'm going to be healthy or not. It's all about what I'm going to do. And so I came to the point I was so at the end of myself. I remember at this point, I was not attending church. You probably saw me if you were there. I was not attending church much. I was barely here. I couldn't even come on the week. I was just doing the minimum that I could do. Dinner and all of that was like, take care of the kids and, like, maintain my relationship. And after that, it was like I would crash. But at the very end, I couldn't even do any of that. I couldn't even do any of that. I was bedridden all day. And I remember saying to God, like, it's funny because everyone would come, bring them in bed and being like, hey, God, like, do something. I can't. I'm at the end of myself. Like, I will die. If something doesn't happen, I will die. Because I can't eat. At this point, guys, like, I was like, did a liquid diet before that, and it hadn't worked. And so I couldn't even eat food at the end, okay? So it had been like a week without eating food. So I'm like, I don't know where to turn. Because when I go to the hospital, it was like they just sent me back with Tylenol 3. They didn't pick up on the obstruction. They would recommend, it was probably the gallbladder. We'll get a surgeon to call you. But I didn't for the longest time have a call for a surgery. Then I finally got one. But I was like, that was when I was like, I'm going to try and do it with food, you know. I won't eat fatty foods and all that stuff. And then my specialist, my doctor, my specialist for my intestines, she would just say, like, oh, it's the Crohn's. It's the Crohn's. But I kept telling her, no, like, the pain is down here. I know I live with Crohn's. I know I don't have the symptoms. It's not Crohn's. There's something else. And she even did, like, a colonoscopy, and she couldn't put the the camera through my colon into the small intestine. But she didn't. She just said, like, oh, I couldn't see in your small intestine because I couldn't get the camera in there. There was, like, it had been too risky to block. It was like a kind of blockage. And then Sean in the car, he was like, don't you think it's weird that she couldn't put that small little camera through your intestine? Like, wouldn't that be an issue? And I was like, well, I guess if it would be, she would have done something about it, right? And so it sounded like everything was ignored or not noticed. But I look back, hindsight 2020, like, I look back, I probably, like, if I wasn't ready to get just my gallbladder removed, like, and I was in fear and I had all this stuff, I probably wouldn't have been ready to do any kind of surgery, probably, right? Yeah. And so God, looking back, I just see, there's so much looking back. I'm like, my gosh, God, You took those, it was like from the first talk of like having surgery up until the second one, I think it was about 5 years. And I was like, what? Like, you were preparing me. You brought me through this whole process, this whole journey of preparing me to the point where I was laying down in my bed and I was saying, God, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. I want to have surgery. Like that, for me to say that, God did a lot in my heart for me to be at a point like, I want surgery. I just want a doctor to find what I have, and I will do whatever needs to be done. And I was so serious. God knew I was serious. At this point, like, I couldn't even eat, so I can't rely on that. My doctors, there was no option to that. I didn't know where to go. It was like, God, I'll do anything. And that's when God said, I want you to go to this other hospital. And I'm like, okay. And I had major peace. Like, usually, guys, I had to be dragged to the hospital. Literally dragged. Sean was like, you're going to hospital. You look like you're dying. And, like, I volunteered to go to hospital. Like, that's how God has so prepared my heart. I volunteered. I was like, I had peace. I called my parents, told them to come get the kids the next morning. Sean was preaching. So that morning, I'm like, I'm going to the hospital. He's like, what? Then he kept going, doing his stuff, and he comes out of the bathroom again. He's like, you're actually going to hospital. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hospital. And it's just amazing from that moment on, like, or I thought, like, because I had not only God dealt with the fear, I thought maybe because my way of the process was, like, for God to, like, have the glory, and I wanted God to have the glory, and I wanted it to be, like, a supernatural healing. God, like, this whole surgery, I talk about it all the time like it was a miracle. Like, God's hand was on every part of it. But it was God's way. But for some reason, I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept it. By God, by His grace, He will send us through processes that even if there's something that we can't accept or we're not ready, He'll bring us through a process to the point where it's like, okay, I'm ready. And so it was awesome. From the moment God spoke to me, go to the hospital, from the moment, I remember being in the hospital, and at this point, I was like, God, like I was sick, but I wasn't having an attack that day. So I'm like, oh, are they going to take me seriously? Right? And because I kind of have nothing, there's no attack going on right now. Like, I'm not vomiting or anything, right? So, but by the time I got to the hospital, guys, I got more sick than I've ever had before. At this point, because I hadn't eaten, I was like bones, and my stomach was distended. It looked like I was 8 months pregnant. And when I went to the registration, the first thing she says, she said, oh, you're pregnant? And I'm like, no, this is the issue. And she's like, oh. And I remember leaving that, and I'm like, okay, I feel like she's going to take me seriously. I'm like, I could feel like, okay, something's about to happen. I was sorry. At that point, I just started to cry, and I'm like, I don't want to be alone. But Sean was here preaching, and I was like, I don't want to be alone. And right at that moment, Son, our head intercessor, just walks in. And so just from every little moment, God told me, watch my masterpiece, watch my extended hand. And seriously, God, even the doctors were saying, like, wow, like, the surgery went better than expected. I was supposed to have a bag, like, where originally, like, when I first got in there, they were like, this is so bad, they had a little piece of intestines, like sticking out with, like, a bag where it was like, that's where I would go. And I didn't have that. I mean, everything went so well. The recovery, everything. It was just like, God, it was a miracle. I look back, I'm like, God, it was a miracle. Gosh. Like, and so, did I even say my point number 3, the process of letting go of control? No. Okay, so 3. I did my 3rd point, the process of letting go of control. Numbers 27-11. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff. Did I read that already? I feel like, no, I didn't. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, you and your brother Aaron, gather the assembly together, speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of that rock for the community so they and their livestock could drink. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arms, struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock livestock drank. So what you see here, so God told Moses, speak to the rock. But Moses, he took the rod and he struck the rock. In the past, God had used the rod. In the past, that's what God was using for many miracles. Yeah. God used the rod. Yeah. And Moses there, what he did is that he did what was comfortable for him. Yeah. He didn't trust God at that moment to speak to the rock. He had that clutch. And for me, so sometimes we have this clutch, like God does this way, or we expect certain things, but God is like, whoop, no, I'm doing it this way this time. And so my prayer for you is that you would be so just like God, whatever way. Whatever way. To be completely honest, Sean wasn't completely the package I would have expected. He had dreads. Like, I know a lot of my friends were like, I want a boy who's tall and who has this and I was like, God, I just want him to be a man of God. Like, I just want him to be a man of God. He loves you. And I remember Sean coming to speak to me the first time. I completely ignored him because I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, there's no point of entertaining any guys right now. Like, I'm not into having guy friends, okay? That was just, no, okay? At this point, I did not believe in having God friends because it just always worked out wrong. And so I saw him coming up, I'm like, there's no way. So he was like, hi, how are you doing? And I'm like, kept looking away, and I was, good. And he walked away thinking I was a snob. And anyways, but this matter, you see? Okay, maybe. But I know that I was like, God, I just want whoever you want for me. And like, Sean, the dread guy, who hardcore, his car looked like stickers all over there's like no way I could bring that to my parents. Like, it was just like, but you know what? His car broke down before he met my parents and got a new car. No. But you know, but like, and he's the perfect man for me. Like, he's so perfect. Like, gosh. So amazing man for me. So, no, I love it when you guys laugh. It makes me, yeah. Okay. So the process of trust, okay? Fourth point, the process of the trust. Numbers 20:12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me and you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in your sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. You know, this is the beauty of part, okay? They never entered the promised land. Yeah. They didn't. No. That generation actually that was in slavery didn't actually enter the promised land. Their generation after them did, but not that generation. But Israelite was given numerous opportunities to get it. Numerous tests to get it, but they failed them all. But guys, good news. Jesus was put through so much test and so much temptation, and he conquered them all. Yeah. He conquered them all, guys. Jesus, when we accept Jesus in our lives, his spirit comes and lives inside of us. And that same spirit that just did all those miracles and that raised Christ from the dead and that conquered and was able to be strong in the midst of all the temptation and that was able to just be like, God, let your will be done. I'm just going to do whatever, your will be done, your will be done. That same spirit lives inside of us. Lives inside of us. That gives us the ability. It gives us the ability to do anything, to conquer any fear, to let go of any control. It's awesome, guys. And I look back, oh, gosh, it's so good. I look back, like in that little process where I was just being a little hard-headed. I look back and I'm like, gosh, was it meant to be that I go through this? Because it's just so, like, God redeems it so well. God redeems things so well that you're like, gosh, God, was that part of the plan? And maybe it was. Who knows? We'll know in heaven. You can ask that in heaven. But I'm like, I look back, and in those, like, from the first time I was like, God was telling me, like, do surgery, and then from the last surgery, that was, I think, 5-6 years. I'm not too sure. But I look back, and, like, I've grown so much. I've learned so much wisdom. I've gained so much strength. I've gained so much perseverance. I've learned so much. It's almost like it made me who I am today. And I look back and I'm like, guys, in those 5 years, I had 3 kids.
Yeah.
I had 3 kids in those 5 years. I was told I was never supposed to have kids. I mean, God is such a good, redeeming God. That even if we go blindly into something, God is just like, it's okay, I'll bring you through a process where you're just going to be like, okay with it. And so I'm just like, I'm in awe of God and his goodness. And guys, it's like, I'm sure you could sit down with a journal and probably looked at all the processes that God put through and how he redeemed it. And maybe some of you guys are in that process right now. And be excited, okay? Be excited. So, guys, I'm going to actually say this. I said it in the first time. I'm going to say it again. I lived my message during the week of preparation for where I'm standing right now. Like, where I'm standing right now, that was one of God's, that's one of God's, word over my life that I would speak one day, okay? And I would always, be like, no, like Moses, no way. Like, I have a hard time talking to Sean, my husband, about, what's in my heart, let alone go on stage and, speak to a bunch of people. I'm French, and sometimes I don't communicate my words well in English, and it comes out funny, and I was like, it's so crazy, because it's like, I lived that message. Beginning the week, because I turned 32 last week, and I said to God, I don't want to enter this year the same way. I don't want to cater to any of my fears. I don't want to do any of that this year. And so when Sean asked me, do you want to speak? Because he always asked me. He said, do you want to speak this Sunday? I finally said yes. And then when I said yes, I entered a process of major fear all week. Why? Why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. All those people speaking their words, they have no clue what they're saying. Having panic attacks, guys, major anxiety attacks all week. But I felt to just continue to say yes. Continue to say yes. Despite what I feel, it's okay. Continue to say yes. To say yes. And look at, I'm here, and I'm doing it. This is a miracle. It's a miracle. Thank you. So, guys, are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready to guys, I'm excited because I'm all about church community, okay? I'm all about it. Plug in. There's a sign up for, the Connect groups. Do it, okay? Yeah. It's so important. I can't even stress the importance, okay? And because your victory, guys, your personal victories is our personal victories, okay? Yeah. It's our personal victories. I think about this. When I had my obstruction in my intestines, it was leading to a bunch of different issues. Just because of the obstruction that was there. I wasn't having the Crohn's disease symptoms, but I had a lot of different bubbles. I have a list. I was going to read it to you, but I'm not going to. But I have a list of stuff. I had parasites, cholesterol, low blood pressure. I had all kinds. Didn't have my periods anymore. I had all kinds of, a list goes on about all kinds of stuff. Adrenal failure. I had a crazy amount of stuff happening to my body. But when they removed that piece, everything else came into order. Like that, guys. Everything else, I do not struggle anymore with anything. I have complete health. Just because that one thing came into order, everything else in my life came into order. And my encouragement to you is that you examine your life. Maybe there's just one thing in your life that God is like, I'm just bringing into order. And then everything else is going to come into order in your life. Your personal victories, God's had a mandate. He has a mandate for this church. Yeah. Yeah. Guys, we can't do it alone. It's not about the leadership. Because if it was, Moses and the Israelite would have entered the promised land right away. Because it was in only 11 days. And Moses was pretty righteous and trusting God like for many, many years. But it wasn't about Moses. It was about the people as whole. So guys, together God wants us to enter into the promised land. And we're in like a new season of entering into something. Like we passed this mandate and we're like, we want 800 people by the end of this. We're all, God has way more than what that mandate says on that fridge. Yeah. Way more. Way more. But are we ready together to believe together? To pray together? Yeah. It doesn't have to be a corporate meeting. It could be at home. It's just to come together. And it could be something that you're like, you know what, I feel like, who knows what one little change that you might do in a person's life, how it could affect the whole community. Look at me. Yeah. Look at me. Yeah. You too have something. Yeah. And so I just want to encourage you today to just go for it. Just don't let go of the fears, trying to expect, okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, I want to do this, but I'm going to do it this way. Sorry, I have a hair that's bothering me. I'm going to do it this way. We have control for our plans in our life. Everything's going to have to order this way. No, guys. It's okay to have faith in the end goal in the promised land, but let go of the process. Let it go.